Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive Positive Recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of Positive Recovery MD podcast, the podcast that aims to help you flourish, whether you're in recovery or not. These tools are meant to help increase your well-being, no matter what you do or who you are. Your co-hosts are here, Jason Powers, Julie DeNofa, and today we have a special guest, Peter Maldonado, who Julie is going to introduce.
Peter, thanks so much for being on our podcast. I was really excited when I learned that that's who we're having on today. Fun joking with you today when you said, hey, what are you doing at 2:00? And I said, I'm on my way to LAX.
Which, by the way, you didn't follow up on. So I believed that the whole time until we got on just now.
Technology is amazing. You could have done it from a summary.
Maybe so. You never know. So I am fortunate to know Peter for quite a few years now. He is the clinical outreach of Houston director for business development for Discovery Behavioral Health, which, Peter, you'll have to kind of tell us a little bit more about that and let some of our listeners know, because that used to be Park, right? Or Park is part of Discovery Behavioral Health.
It is still a Park.
Okay. So tell us, might as well tell us now.
Okay. Well, again, jump into the career part, huh? Right. So I got the opportunity to join Discovery Behavioral Health in June of this year. The acquisition, Discovery Behavioral Health acquired the Park from Memorial Hermann mid-August. So I had knowledge of that. That's one of the big reasons of why I made the shift. I just moved to Houston. I feel like I still say just moved, but I moved here in 2016. My career started in Austin in 2009. Yeah, everyone knows the Park. I mean, the Park is the Park. Yeah, I mean, you probably know more about it than I do.
Well, I mean, I totally jacked up the whole thing about what it was with Discovery Behavioral, because I thought maybe there was going to be some type of name change, but so many of our listeners know the Park, and Dr. Powers and myself have both, worked with many people that make the Park what it is today. That's for sure.
I used to work there. Actually, I made it what it is. Without me,
it'd be nothing.
They would be in existence. Exactly.
Grateful to you, Dr. Powers.
Yeah, I know. I had 11-month run, 12-month run.
So with that, I will say that some of the kind of cool and interesting things about Peter is that he is someone who can do the most amazing handstands. I've witnessed these. He practices yoga regularly. He also can do splits, and that I didn't get to see. But something that he kind of touts himself as being able to do is that he considers himself to be overly observant. And so with that, I was thinking like, gosh, I wonder what he's noticed or what he sees or that kind of stuff, and wonder why you didn't go into like the FBI or something like this, right? But instead you wound up doing business
because of my background.
We're going to hear a little bit more about that. Our listeners are in for a treat for sure today with Peter's story. What I will say is that knowing Peter is to know someone that will go to great lengths to help someone to get into recovery, help someone to get into treatment, and really just shows up as just an amazing human being day in and day out. And this is what I know about Peter. He loves to see people kind of operate in their own space, in their element, and helps guide and gently direct people to living a better life, which is so much what we stand for. So glad that you get to be here with us today. I've watched you connect so many people together and create opportunities and possibilities for others. You did this, came to Austin, grew up in East Texas, not being from Texas myself. I don't know exactly that much about East Texas, but whenever we talk about it or I hear someone, they're like, oh, it's East Texas. And that's supposed to mean something. So maybe you can tell me more about that. And then what I also will say is a quote or something that's really important to him, or best advice that he has, is to quote unquote, find a mentor And I know that Peter has been a mentor for others, as well as has really great mentors in his life. So with that, tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, yeah, I'll jump right in. I am from East Texas. Don't want to spend too much time on that, but just the quick snippets, right? I am a person in recovery. I identify as a person in recovery, and which means once upon a time, I was not sober. Come from a great family, 7 of us growing up. Mom and dad are still married 50 plus years. Normal, in my opinion, I guess normal upbringing, all that stuff. Started dabbling with marijuana, alcohol around 15, 16. And then my addiction progressed really fast, like within a semester. I remember like just smoking weed and drinking and being like, well, I'm never going to snort a line of anything, or I'm never going to put a needle in my arm or whatever. And then quickly crossed those lines by the time I was 16, going on 17, I was smoking meth, doing hard drugs, started, intravenous cocaine. Needless to say, small town, East Texas, 30,000 people. I was very popular with the cops. So that happened, legal trouble. As soon as I turned 18, I was, able to be on probation. So I was, and that happened. Lots of treatment episodes, lots of relapses, and that's important. And I'll get more into it later on, but I'd go to treatment about once a year since the age of 18, 19. The age of 21, I got sent to a long-term treatment center in Austin, Texas, federally funded. And I was there for over 6 months. Dove into the Austin recovery scene, had some great mentors, participating in a 12-step program, and was rallied around by men and quickly was shown to go be of service. So at like 6 months sober, my mentor, my sponsor, was dragging me to this detox unit every Sunday. And he's like, you come and be of service. And I was like, what do I have to give? I'm like, I don't, you get that feeling of like, what do I know? But I'm talking to people who are like 5 hours sober or 24 hours sober, and I get to offer them some hope. And my mentor was like, just do what we did to you. Very altruistic movement, very awesome approach. At the time, I was working at this coffee shop on UT on campus, which is awesome for me. I loved it, being around academic stuff and feeling the energy of knowledge, of just, which is totally opposite of what I came from, of living a very not so healthy lifestyle and being surrounded by people who are all on probation or going to prison or just getting out of prison and all that stuff. So loved it. Worked at that coffee shop for about over a year. And what ended up happening is this detox center I kept going to every Sunday is called Austin Recovery. They're like, hey, you keep showing up every week. Like, do you want a job? Like, we're hiring for a tech. So I was like, absolutely, right? A little pay bump from the coffee shop. I'm thinking like adults. I'm 22 at the time. Benefits, insurance. I'm like, yeah, like this is all my recovery. And got sober April 29th, 2008, and I started working in the field officially. Halloween Day 2009 was my first day getting to drive the clients to a 12-step meeting. I worked the 90-day program. And it was awesome. There was only like 6, 7 guys, going to the meeting. And I remember realizing that I was the youngest person in the van. And that was just such a mind-blowing, like of myself. Like it's just beyond me that I'm in that position. And I guess I didn't take the time to like realize milestones in my life and recovery happening. I just always viewed myself as a screw up. And slowly but surely, like I just kept doing what was asked of me. Mentors, right? People guiding me, helping me. I asked a ton of questions. I'm still that way today. Sometimes I go into these bouts of, imposter syndrome. So I'm like, do I really know what I'm doing? Like, mentors are like, I feel like a lot of us feel that way sometimes. I just kept showing up to work and I just kept getting promoted in a way. I got an opportunity to help out a startup approximately 2012, 2011, called Nova Recovery Center out in Wimberley area. My good buddy, Matt Gorman. That was a lot of fun. Got to do that for 4 years. I was at Austin Recovery for 4 years. Yeah, that was fun because we all wore different hats. And I'm sure you guys know, like doing a startup, I could be answering an admission call, picking up meds, driving a client to the airport, all in the same shift. Mm-hmm. And getting to learn that was fun. And that's really where my career started. Networking in the Austin area, being introduced to the TAP, what that stood for, and getting thrown into business development, which is what I still do now to this day. I even forget what year that was, because I feel like I was kind of a hybrid. Like I'd be doing groups, but then also going out to networking events and just.
And how did you stay connected with the recovery community in Austin? Like how did that, you're working in the field now, you're kind of still early in recovery, kind of. How did you stay connected?
I was very, very involved with the 12-step groups there. There's a ton of them. And I was quickly taught by my mentor to separate my personal recovery from my job. He's like, you're getting a paycheck, you clock in, you clock out. Integrity means that you get to show up and be the best you can. Sure, recovery is allowing me to do that, but doing my job does not equal my personal recovery.
When you say mentor, I just want to make sure for our listeners that we're clear. That wasn't your sponsor. That was truly just a mentor. Or was
no, that was my sponsor. It was my sponsor. He worked in the field at that time.
Gotcha.
So I kind of lucked out with that. In the beginning, it was pretty easy to turn it on, turn it off, I guess. I was an hourly employee, so it was easy to know when I was at work and when I was not at work. And then it wasn't that hard. Like I would navigate around. I knew like the 12-step meeting schedule that the clients would go to, so I would purposefully not go there, stuff like that. There was opportunities where I got to drive clients to meetings. And when I did that, I didn't feel like I was a participant in the meeting. I was getting paid for that hour. So I needed to do my job, which was to observe, redirect, and report.
Yeah, George Joseph talks a lot about that, has forever. Like when you're at work, you're wearing the hat of a worker, but that's not the same as your recovery. And a lot of people who confuse the two end up relapsing. So speaking of your relapses and your multiple treatments, I want to go back to that because it sounds like you started going to treatment annually at about 18, 19, but you got sober at 22.
21, yeah.
So you only went to 3 treatments, right?
Correct. Well, I'll fast forward because I had a slip up in 2020 that I'll talk about.
Right. So, but just to kind of let our listeners know, people expect there to be a cure for this chronic disease. So if you have a medical intervention and you have a treatment, but there's a relapse, people think treatment failed. It takes an average of 7 quit attempts to quit anything. And it takes an average of 4 treatment episodes to achieve long-lasting recovery. And the more times that you are treated, the better the prognosis for good, long-lasting recovery. So, sounds like you're in the norm. Sounds like you're in the mean because we have one more coming, right? So yeah, so you're like kicking ass, taking names, but what happened?
Well, before I get to that, to go back on what you were saying, it's absolutely true because when I would relapse and stuff, I don't know if I'd say I would take it more seriously next time. It wasn't brand new. It was, like when I would get back into treatment or start a recovery again, I just had experience to draw from. And honestly, I feel like in the beginning, during the relapses and all that stuff, I didn't give the disease the respect it warrants. And I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes I see. And I still see it to this day when, that it's like, oh, well, I got it. Like I just won't get high. It's just like, well, if it was that easy, it would be easy.
Right. It's not that easy. And, I totally agree. Like I haven't relapsed since my first treatment episode. And I understand I'm the outlier, but I also understand like when people don't give it the respect that not its admiration, but actually recognize its power, that they're just like most people, and there's nothing different about me. I'm lucky, but I could easily relapse. Right. And it helps me see that they're not, foolhardy or, they're just human beings. Right. It takes what it takes. And we just plant seeds, and we're lucky if your garden sprouts early, it a lot of luck, I think. Anyway.
Well, like what you just said, right? The seeds that were planted, I later then utilized. And
yeah, exactly.
We're super grateful for going back to the boundaries between my job and my personal recovery. In the beginning, it was pretty easy. If I was taking the clients to a meeting, I would not share, I would not participate. And at the time, that was pretty simple. It was pretty cut and dry. I feel like later on, when I started to enter, and being promoted and being asked more of me responsibly, my career was growing, which again was still like beyond me because, I took a break from college in 2012 and I'm still on that break. So yeah, my career kind of just took off. And again, my perspective is like, I just kept showing up to work and I just got promoted like over and over again. And So I guess there was some consistency there. And again, lots of asking questions and all that fun stuff. And when I got into like the positions where there wasn't necessarily a shift, when it came to like admissions or business development, where the job is to make the phone ring. And it's like, it could be stressful when the phone is ringing too much, but then it can also be stressful when the phone's not ringing at all. It's just like a double-edged sword. And so I started to take on that role approximately 2015, for sure 2016, when I moved to Houston, doing business development, helping people. And so I want to say this real quick. The interesting thing about this, helping people to get into treatment, I didn't know that was a job or that was a thing. And I used to do it for free. And what I mean by that is Awesome Recovery is not around anymore, but I worked at Awesome Recovery and I would find out about these grants that the facility would get. And a part of my service commitment is I would go to the homeless shelter in Austin and do a 12-step meeting and help out. And a good buddy of mine worked at the homeless shelter, and he would come across these addicts who were like really serious about wanting to get sober. And we would talk about that. And I'm like, yo, if they're using meth, like currently Awesome Recovery has a grant that they could come in for free. Like it's a state funded, grant and all that stuff. So we would literally go downtown Austin under the bridge to pick up these guys and drive them to Awesome Recovery Detox. And we would kind of coach them because they're like strung out on heroin and stuff. I'm like, well, do you do meth? They're like, of course, we do everything. So I was like, well, just really harp on that when you go into this place, which was not a lie, but it was just, I would drive them to the place that I worked at just because I found out that there was a grant. And then I would do this off shift, right, during my free time, and drop these guys off and get them into treatment. And then hours later, go and work my shift. Fast forward to business development and helping guide people get into treatment. It's like, man, I've been doing this for free. And networking, connecting, getting to tour and visit treatment centers and learn about different modalities and different treatment approaches and lengths of stay and all that fun stuff really opened my eyes to different paths and different options for recovery. And also just over the years, like you guys know, dealing with more complex cases and dual diagnosis and all this stuff where it's like, it was very overwhelming at times. It was and I feel like somewhere along the line, I stopped taking care of myself and was so involved with my career. And, it's tragic stories at times where there'd be times where I'd be the last person someone talked to on the phone right before they overdosed and passed and stuff like that. It just kind of comes with the territory. And again, my mentor was really strict about not using terms like, oh, I save lives and stuff like that. Because he quickly said that if you take responsibility or credit for the guys who make this deal and get this recovery thing, then you have to take the credit for the ones that die too. And it's like, I just get to be a light and be a path and a guide. It's not of my doing. And I play a role in their life, maybe an important one to them, but needless to say, it's I get to do what's asked of me and then step out of the way and hopefully wish them well on their journey.
Where in your recovery story did you get like into yoga? Like, cause you're touted as the Texas sober yogi, right? So
that's right.
The Texas sober yogi, when in your recovery did you kind of turn to yoga?
Yeah, it was right before I moved to Houston. So probably around 2015, I really got into the yoga scene in Austin, and that was a lot of fun. And then moving to Houston, the yoga scene was awesome. There was lots. It reminded me a lot of just the 12-step recovery scene where it was people genuinely were living a healthy lifestyle and were about, spirituality and altruism and doing charitable events, doing different yoga classes to raise money for different charities. We got to do some of that. We raised some money for the Council on Recovery here in Houston and just other stuff, MD Anderson, just different charitable causes. And that was just so fun. That was so fun to be around people. Because I also feel like I was approximately 7-8 years sober. I didn't want to be identified by my disease or necessarily my recovery. I got to be around other people who weren't necessarily abstinence from drugs and alcohol, but were living a recovery lifestyle of their own, whether that's trauma, grief, negative lifestyle habits or what, whatever. So it was just cool to be identified by something, yet get to participate in the recovery aspect of it and have a diversified kind of friend group, which was really fun. But we all had similar goals and similar outlooks on life. And I mean, toy drives, I mean, you name it, just awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So that's when that happened.
Yeah. A lot of people don't like to be identified with a disease or something negative. And, I totally get that. Like, while the use of addict or addiction for me is rather just descriptive, what you said about being a light, and I just wanted to see how you felt about, like, what I find when I'm doing that is so nice. Don't you agree that when you're sort of a hollow vessel or a light and you're helping others, it's great to not really, because if your cup is full of, I know everything and my way is the best way, you have to do this. I don't feel like you're shining anything. You're casting, you're projecting your shadow, but being a light, and like accepting people where they're at and finding the best tool for them, right? Not knowing what size shoe or what shoe they need, but say, hey, what size foot are you? What's most comfortable? How are we going to help? I mean, don't you agree? That's one of the best things about being a light.
Absolutely. And again, I've had great mentors that was their approach with me, and allowing me to make mistakes and allowing me to be humbled by the mistakes and then be there for when I ask for help.
What is the most surprising thing you've learned being in recovery, overall?
That's a tough question. I guess in the beginning was that I don't know everything.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this. Let me wait on that. Let's see. What is your favorite sound?
Oming.
Okay, cool. Just say om. What's your least favorite sound?
Least favorite sound? Probably my ringtone. Because it's been on silent since probably 2016.
Oh, great.
Or it's been on vibrate.
Oh, nice. And what's your favorite word?
My favorite word? Namaste.
And your least favorite word? Can't. What turns you on? Like, what are you most passionate about? What turns you
on? I'm actually passionate about other people's passion.
Cool.
I love being a spectator when someone's doing their thing, whether that's, a physical acrobatic thing or academic, or just seeing people's like eyes light up and they're talking about or doing something that I can tell is like awesome for them.
Especially from the bushes outside their house, huh? I know. What turns you off?
Just pessimism and pessimisticness. That's that word. I don't know. Pessimism.
Yeah. The ism.
Yes.
So in an alternate universe, what vocation do you think you would love to have a stab at? Musician or which one?
Surfer.
Oh, killer. And what vocation, if forced to do, would you loathe?
Being in a cubicle of any kind.
Office space.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm going to need you to stay. Okay.
Case of the Mondays. Yes.
So assuming there's a God, when you die and you're at the gated community for safety, that is heaven, what would you like to hear come out of God's mouth?
That was a fun trip.
Namaste, bitch. I'm sorry.
That's it.
Yeah. So, we had Keith David on, or David Keith. I can't remember. I'm so bad with names. But he's like, what's your favorite word? He's like, what's your favorite word? Motherfucker. And then what do you want to hear God say when you die? He goes, welcome, motherfucker. It was great. I thought you were going to say namaste. I don't know why I had to be rude about it. I'm sorry. Yes. So thank you so much. We're going to go into the last leg, which Julie runs, the positive intervention.
Yeah, so I'm going to open it with a quote written by Joan Curcio. Advances are made by those with at least a touch of irrational confidence in what they can do. So we asked Peter to journal about what you believe yourself to be capable of doing. Allow yourself to engage in dreams that initially might seem to be irrationally outside of your grasp, removing the barriers in your mind. The resilience and capability of the human soul is vast. Exercise hope and optimism and envision you at your very best. Don't be as crazy as the person who jumped off a tall building thinking he could fly. Be as crazy as those who made flight possible. So we asked you to journal about this, and I was wondering what that experience was like for you, and if you could share a little bit about that experience with our listeners.
Absolutely. And this is something that I've talked about with close friends. My wife and I share this vision and this essentially free clinical services for families in need, underprivileged communities. I'm Hispanic, so seeing a ton of Hispanic and Black males in the prison system is heartbreaking. And in my opinion, I feel like that a lot of that could be preventable if there was clinical services and just more outreach available and affordable. So that's a dream that I've had. And especially something that happened about a year ago where my sister was involved in an incident with a family member who was in a bipolar manic episode. And she ended up losing her life while trying to get him help. And I just feel like stuff like that, it's like you either call the cops and get this person in trouble, or you don't and possibly experience a dangerous experience. And if there's an alternative where people can find help, and I'll say this, when she did attempt to try to find help for him, she was told by her local MHMR that since he didn't want to voluntarily admit, someone's life had to be in danger before they could pick him up. And a couple hours later, not only was her life in danger, but she was gone. So I just feel like as people, we could do better. As professionals, we need to do better. Starting with having safe places where education, clinical services, family therapy, individual therapy, parenting classes, just so much, right? I can go on and on and on, but being able to offer that, I think could help save a lot of heartache.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There's not much I can say. I do recall when that happened in your life. And I will say that soon after it happened, the way that you continued to show up and really just want to look for ways to gain support for others that could be in a similar situation that your sister was in was pretty evident early on. And so you were moving into a place of action, probably out of love, wanting to make sure that it didn't happen again to somebody else. And so I'm glad that we do have some resources in Houston, and I'm glad that you're dreaming big about what you might be able to do in the future to be able to be right now, maybe out of your reach, but something that down the road you might be able to offer to help others.
My wife and I are really passionate about it. She's a clinician, she's a social worker, and it's something we both are really passionate about. And I will say this, though, I'm still doing some healing around that. And 3 weeks or so, I start a grief counseling group that I get to be a part of. So I did make the mistake of trying to fast forward the grief, I guess, or the process or whatever it is. And I would quickly run into a wall and emotionally and be like, whoa, slow down. Like you can't just do all this right now. So it's been almost a year, and see my therapist weekly, see my psychiatrist, often. So we can't go around trying to fix people if we're still walking around bleeding ourselves.
Yeah. And asking for help and, for our listeners, being able to ask for help and participate in ways that will help with the healing are oh so important. So I'm glad that you're taking that time for yourself.
And a lot of people look out for me and hold me accountable. And, I've had some friends that will just be raw with me. It's like, hey, you're taking care of yourself, right? Like, how are you doing? How's your recovery? So very grateful for that.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And being in the field and getting, if you're like bleeding now and you take care of it, that doesn't mean you're not able to help while you're doing it. It doesn't mean you're not going to bleed again. I mean, I think recognizing that we're all, I'd say, in a constant state of growth. And and if it requires a tool be used, doesn't matter if it's a brace or a splint or a surgery or a therapy or grief counseling or anything. And I do believe it's the vulnerability and authenticity that makes us most helpful. I personally, there's definitely boundaries. Like being able to not bring your grief to work is key. Because like if you're falling apart, you're right. You can't help somebody if you're actively falling apart. But it's also I think it's very inspiring to see how you're making meaning of what happened to your sister and applying it to help others. Because I mean, that's the great, she would think it was beautiful. I don't know her, but I can't imagine anything else. And thank you for joining us, Peter.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor and a privilege. And I have kept up with you guys. So when I got asked to be on this, I was like, really? Like, you want me on there? Yeah.
We thought we were getting Peter Jennings, but we'll take Peter.
This is the second time that's happened this week.
Oh my goodness. Well, thanks, Peter, for being with us, joining us today. For our listeners, don't hesitate to ask for help should you need it. And Dr. Powers, I'll turn it back over to you to close us out.
So remember, everybody, this is not a dress rehearsal. Life will be over before you know it. So please be good to yourself and be good to one another. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.